Hey folks. How's everybody doing? That's the OCD pedal. I really like that. I'm running through the fractal at the moment, but for my clean sound. No, I've got a clean sound in here, but it's a Friedman, and this is the OCD. The OCD just has a little more of that classic rock kind of thing, so I've got both options. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. I thought what I'd talk about today is the modes of the major scale. I want to continue on from that stuff I've done with the 7 days of 7 modes. I had a question from someone about that. But for now, if you haven't got a drink, pull up a drink. This is what I'm having, which is Tiger Crystal Ultra Low Carb Beer. It's okay. It's not great, but it's beer and it was cheap. So grab a drink. If you don't drink alcohol, that's totally cool. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or a tea, depending on what time it is. Herbal tea if it's evening, whatever you want. A glass of water. But join me for this because I'm going to talk about modes today. So first one I thought I'd talk about is Dorian. Obviously I don't need to talk about major scale, right? Because everyone knows major scale, right? If you're delving into the modes, the assumption would be that you already know the major scale, because if you don't, that's where you should start, right? But Dorian, right? Essentially, it's the 2-second mode, right? So it has root note from B flat, root note. There's a reason I'm on B flat. I'll get to that in a minute. So B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat and B flat. So root, second, flat third, fourth, fifth, flat natural 6, flat 7 and root, right? So really what that's telling us is that with that natural 6 in there, it'll work over 6 chords, minor 6 that is, it'll work over minor 7s, right? Work over minor 9s, it'll work over minor 13s, because 6 and 13 are the same thing, right? Minor 11, right? It's got a broad appeal in a lot of things, but really the key place you'd use this, and I talked about this in that Dorian video, is over 2 5s, right? So if we go 2 5 1, but we never actually go to the 1, we just go 2 5, that would be an example of somewhere where you would use Dorian quite a bit. So a great example of that is Chameleon, and I'm going to start by playing Chameleon. I've found the backing track for this. I've used it before. No doubt I'll get a copyright notice for this. I'm probably going to get this the whole way through this live stream, but hey, hopefully they don't block it. That's the main thing. Anyway, I'll give it a go. Let me know if you're hearing this. Hopefully the sound's all coming through. The other day I had no sound for the first 10 minutes and didn't know.
country out.
And there you go. They came in with the ad. Good luck with the voting, Joel. It seems to be that time. So they come in with an ad just at the wrong place, don't they? Don't you just love that? So, that was a bit of an example of Dorian. And I was kind of exploring things. There was one point I actually hit the flat 6. I kind of heard it. Oh, thanks, Teddy. You think it's sloppy. Thanks, man. What does everyone else think? Whoever Teddy is? So, anyway, Dorian is like I said, the second mode. It has a bunch of good, useful colours. I was trying to make a point of hitting on that 6th note. Trying to hit on that 6th note was a good sound. Yeah, that's part of that. So, Dorian. The next thing I will talk about is I'm going to move on to. Let's have a look at a different minor mode. This one, in this case, is going to be an Aeolian thing, right? Because the thing with Dorian is it's a certain kind of flavor, right? And Aeolian has a totally different kind of flavor. So Aeolian to me has a more of a sadder sound. It's more... It's what I'd associate with a minor. When I think the word minor, I think sad, right? If I think major, I think happy, and if I think dominant, I kind of think blues or funky, right? So to me, it's like, if I hear Aeolian, then I go, okay, that's just more a sad sound, whereas Dorian to me doesn't really sound as sad. So anyway, this is a Dorian type thing. This is from, the first one was just Chameleon backing track. This one here is Fusion Guitar backing track in C minor. And by the way, these are just tracks I found today that are... some tracks I found today, they're just on YouTube. I just made up a playlist, so I've never played to any of these before, I don't think. Maybe the Chameleon one I have. So this is jamming backing tracks. So no doubt you can hear with that one, there's it has a different kind of flavour to Dorian to me. And it's mostly because of this F minor thing instead of F7. Right, it kind of changes the whole way I approach that mode. Let me just pull this up so I can see any of your comments that come through. Where are we? Give me 1 second, people. Where'd it go? Is it there? This happens every week. Nah, hang on 1 second. I'll find you. Because if I don't have this here, I won't be able to find your comments. Oh, there we go. Waving positivity. Samuel Sarah says, hey Nick, the arpeggios videos and modes video helped me a lot. I'm practicing them a lot. Really helpful. Thanks, man. Yeah. So the arpeggios, right? If we look at Aeolian. Right? Within that, we can have a bunch of arpeggios, right? If we think of C minor as our first chord, right? That will be our first one. We can also have C minor 9, right? By adding in the second or the ninth, it's the same, right? We can also have C minor. Let's go through all the different modes, right? So we can go different arpeggios within it. So the next one would be D. All right, and because we're essentially in the key of E flat major, we're in C minor, but relatively the same set of notes, same It's not making a lot of sense. We So it would be, sorry, that comment about sloppy just pissed me off. Thanks, dude. Don't watch if you're gonna have a stupid comment like that. Then just don't watch. Don't tune into this. It's, I'm giving my time freely to try and help people. Piss off. In other words. Sorry, that got under my skin a little. So the next one would be D minor 7 flat 5, right? And C minor. So now we have two arpeggios we can use. Right, and the next one would be E flat major. And I'll look at all the E flat major things I can get out of that. Can add the ninth in. Right, and the next one would be F minor. Right, which is different from F7. That's one of the things that differentiates the Aeolian from the Dorian sound, right? The next one would be G minor. Right, all coming from C. Next one would be A flat major. I find the A flat major to be one of the most important out of these all, right? To me, it's one of the ones that makes it different, because Dorian wouldn't have A flat major, right? For example, Dorian would have A minor 7 flat 5. We're very different sound, as opposed to. Any questions? Is this all making sense? Are you hearing everything okay? Like I said, if you haven't got a drink, then join me. Right, let's pull up another track. So where's my playlists? Right, so this one is see you, dude. Goodbye. Mixolydian funk fusion. G guitar backing in G. So Mixolydian mode. Oh, hang on. Need sound up. Let's go. So this is G Mixolydian. So you see with the Mixolydian, it's quite a different sound to kind of how we normally hear the blues, right? The blues to me is like, I really hear the blues as like a sharp 9 sound, right? This kind of thing. Natural third plus the minor third. And you'll often hear singers especially will kind of pivot between those two. They'll do things where they'll go that thing rather than that note or that note is coming. Because it's really, Mixolydian is really a G7 sound. It's not a, how would I say? It's not really a blues sound. It's not really a sharp 9 sound. It's a dominant sound, right? that sort of thing, right? Like a G13 kind of sound. To me, it's a sweeter blues sound. So I sort of think of things like all blues. And these sort of slow blues. When you want to create a pretty sound. It's that sort of sound that is, to me, is Mixolydian. It's a pretty sound. It's not a dirty, filthy sound like this sort of thing, you know. Hey, how you doing, man? Wifey in the end of the room, is that Dixon? I don't follow. Dixon who? Dixon Nacy? Wifey in the other end of the room. I don't follow. I don't get it. To explain. So anyway, back to Mixolydian. So to me, it's sort of, I hear it like a G13 sound. When I think of like minor bluesy things, I think of like this thing, like a sharp 9. Oh, my wife is overhearing your stream. Hey, I'll take credit for it. If I sound anything like Dixon, if you mean Dixon Nacy, then I'm super stoked with that, because it's one of my favorite guitar players, period. Any questions? Any stuff you want to know? So Mixolydian, right? G13 sort of sound. Another great way to play G13. A lot of people know this voicing, right? And that's useful, but this is quite cool. First comment is that she hears an A ice groove and thinks it's Dixon Nacy. There you go. This is a voicing that I use a lot. I find this one super useful. It's kind of interesting because you've got the flat 7 on the bottom. So flat 7, 3, 6, root. Oh, you're too kind. Thank you very much. So this is a voicing that I use quite a bit. It's kind of a little bit bunched up. It's not that comfortable to play, but it's a good sound. Right. Another one I play like is like this. I find that voicing too. So second you play Dorian, 5 you do Mixolydian, and 1 is Aeolian. Is that right? Yeah, so if you're talking about on a 2-5, so the question was, so second you play Dorian, 5 you play Mixolydian, 1 you play Aeolian, is right. I don't think about it that way at all, to be honest, on a 2-5-1. To me, like this, and this all belong to the same key. So, I mean, I'll play you A Dorian. Now I'll play you D. Now I'll play you G Ionian. So I don't actually even think about it that way. There's a couple of ways that I kind of approach 2-5-1s, right? I'll think about the home key, right? That's one approach. Another one... Yeah, or maybe it's Teddy. So you say, are you still pissed? Chill, bro. Let's learn the modes, practice all our PGOs. Maybe just don't be insulting, bro? You know? And that to me would be chill, right? If you got nothing good to say, then just move along. Anyway, where are we? Let's get rid of that. Right, so 2-5-1, like I mentioned. We have if we have this, we have a 2-5-1, right? We can look at it as this is the 2 chord, the 5 chord, and the 1. We can kind of all group that into G major, right? That's super useful. We can also kind of look at it that we can treat it just like the 2 chord doesn't exist, right? So if we have 2 and then 5, right? Just get rid of the 2 chord and just think 5 because they're going to be essentially the same. So I'll often just think like D Mixolydian across both and resolve to G. But I also think all things that relate to D as well, right? So I'll think things like altered scale. Right, I know it's not a major scale mode, but sometimes I'll use that as another color, right? Because I kind of look at all of these things, right? Right. I also kind of look at all the things that relate to those things as well, too, right? Like, so I don't just think this chord to this chord, even if that's what the band's playing, right? Sometimes I'll think to get me to the 5 chord. So there I just went A minor, B minor, C, C sharp diminished, D7, right? And all things related to that. And then, of course, I often think the 6 chord to lead me back to the 1 chord. Thanks, John. Right, and on the major, I will think Aeolian mode at that point, or major scale, but also sometimes think Lydian, because to me Lydian's a better sound a lot of the time, but it depends on the situation, right? So yeah, I don't tend to think Dorian to Mixolydian to Aeolian on a 251 major 251 because they all end up being the same thing. Minor 251, right? A little different. Minor 251s, there really isn't a simple way to kind of get into them. Minor 251s are tough. A lot of people learn Autumn Leaves as a beginner kind of tune, and what they do is they go, okay, well, what's plan? B flat will be 2 5 1 4, and then it's a 2 5 1 in the relative minor, right? And they just play B flat major over the whole lot. Well, that's not good improvising, is it? Right? It's not good. You know, I mean, if you're playing great melodies, then maybe, but usually when someone's at that level, they're not playing good stuff. It's just kind of basic elementary level playing. So the better thing to do is to think 2 5 1 4, play that as all the things that you know against that, and then actually play a minor 2 5 1 over this, right? Right, and so minor 251s are a slightly different thing, right? Phrygian. Now, it's an interesting thing. I was trying to find a backing track to give some examples of Phrygian, and it's really difficult to find Phrygian stuff because all the tracks I found weren't really Phrygian sound at all. The backing tracks that I found went on YouTube, right? They were like, a lot of them were just like E minor to F. That'd be this kind of thing. Which to me is kind of, yeah, you could play Phrygian. But it doesn't, to me, you could play a lot of different things over that. So there's nothing really that kind of spells it. Had they gone E minor and then F over E, so that to me is a different kind of sound, right? So yeah, anyway, Phrygian was one I couldn't find any good examples of. I mean, I could record a track if you'd want me to hear me kind of explore that. But I like Phrygian as a sound. After doing that Phrygian video the other day, I kind of thought, that's a cool sound. Right, it's got a bunch of tensions in it that are cool. Any questions? Anything you particularly want to know? Or should I show you another track? Where are we? What one haven't I done? Let's go to this. While we were talking about Mixolydian, here's All Blues, the Miles Davis tune, right? Pretty straightforward kind of tune. We would use Mixolydian over it, and when we go to the 5 chord, right? And then on those two we'd have to use altered and back to G. So I'll show you that. This is Phil Wilkinson, organ trio thing, organ duo thing I should say. Let's get this sound. So I'll talk you through it. It's a G Mixolydian. C Mixolydian. Back to G. D altered. Same, I'm back to C now. Back to G. And I'll show you kind of what blues scale sounds like, which is a different kind of sound, right? So it's a dirtier, grittier kind of blues. Okay, that was a little bit naughty. So you can see there when I was playing the Mixolydian thing, it's quite a different kind of sound to the pentatonic kind of thing, the kind of blues thing. Now both are useful. I don't think one is superior or better or worse than the other. They're just different, right? Where are we? There we go. They're just different. Different flavors, right? So I like to use a lot of fourth chords. I've probably talked about this before. I understand that people pay good money for that information. I'll share it at coffee. When I get paid, oh, thank you very much, sir. So I've set up the buy me a coffee thing because I had a bunch of questions from people saying that they didn't particularly like PayPal, so buy me a coffee is, I'll link it below. But I like using fourth chords like that. It's one of my favorite ways to harmonize anything. And there's a good reason. I mean, the guitar, it's fundamentally tuned in fourths, isn't it? We have E to A as a fourth, then A to D as a fourth, D to G as a fourth. Now the B string is from G to B as a third. That's a little different, but then we have a fourth again. So a lot of things like a fourth, if that was tuned in all fourths, we'd just do it with straight line, right? But a lot of things that are fourths work really well. So I use it with Mixolydian all the time. It's kind of getting into chord melody a little bit. But But I also do that when I play lines too. I kind of visualize my lines. Okay, I shouldn't play Lydian dominant. I'll just stick to Mixolydian. So I use those, and the thing is, if I want to harmonize lines, so that was way out of Mixolydian, but I can't help it when I hear something going in a direction. I've got to follow it. I can't just kind of ignore it, but you get the idea, right? Did you see there that I'm kind of exploring chordal voicings? I really like them for stuff. So that's a good place to kind of go with when you're dealing with modes, if you're wanting to explore them and look at them, right? Because they just work nicely on the guitar. They all fit pretty nicely, right? It's all G Mixolydian. And even one like that, where it's a little bit crunchy, right? Mostly because we have a major 7 in there, but we also have all these kind of sounds harmonically ringing together in an interesting way. If I play that against the root note, it still sounds pretty good. So I like to use 4th chords a lot. I've been kind of delving into 5ths a little bit. Which is 1, 5, up to the 9, and then a 5th. The other thing that I was always taught too is that you, when you play anything, so if you're playing Mixolydian, you don't just, it's kind of like painting a picture. You don't just paint a picture with one color. So I don't just ever like, if I am playing in a Mixolydian sound, this sort of thing, I won't just exclusively use it. I'll kind of use that. I'll mix in some blues scale. Maybe I'll mix in some other sounds, like I might play. And there I just went, all right, 2/5 into a dominant. So Mixolydian's a really good, useful sound, I find. Lydian is one of my favorites. It's one that I use a lot. The Lydian mode's an interesting one. To most people's ears, Lydian sounds more correct than the major scale does. And I see this all the time with people when they come for lessons. I'll play a chord like an E major. And I'll just say, start on the top string and play me a major scale. And 9 times out of 10, people will go, against that chord, right? I can show you that. So I'll go a chord like this. Nine times out of 10, people will hit that 2, 3, and the raised 4th. So, hang on, where are we? Did that work? So 9 times out of 10 people will hit that raised 4th because to their ear it sounds more correct. And the reason for that is if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't sound as correct, right? It kind of clashes with the 3rd. 1, 2, 3, right? And then the 3rd being the most important note, right? It's the root note, and the 3rd, of course, is the one that defines it as major or minor, right? But if we go, You can hear that natural fourth. So to most people's ears, it's better, right? And I like doing that. I like playing Lydian and exploring it in E because I can play it against the E and keep that drone. And there's a really cool pentatonic in there that I just played, and it's one that I use quite a bit too, which if I'm playing E Lydian, just go down a step and play the pentatonic. So play D sharp minor pentatonic. It's all contained in the Lydian scale, but also it has, you have the 9th, 7th, 6th, sharp 11, 3, 2, right, so all the good notes. So I like exploring it in E for a while. And kind of get that sound in my head, and then I'll do the same thing but in A. And then, of course, drop D. Now, killing it, Nick. Playing great and info. A bit early here in Scotland. Yeah, I'm sorry, the timing doesn't really work very good. So may have to go. We'll catch it all later on. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it, man. Have a great day. Yeah, 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday night was the best time I found for this that I could do it, which won't always work. There's going to be times it's going to clash with other stuff, but I realise it's not the best for a lot of people in a lot of other places, but that's New Zealand. The best time would actually be in the middle of the night for us here. Right, so that was D. Another option, A string down to G. Things sound really weird sometimes in ears, like then that was kind of hard to hear. It's like sort of resonates funny in your ear. Right, and I kind of explore that, and what I find is if you do that for a while, these sounds, they start to... And I find usually after like a 20-minute session of just doing that, like just kind of droning notes, where if I can get a low note on the guitar, sometimes I'll set up loops, whatever, and I kind of, maybe I'll go through cycled fourths, whatever, but I find that sound gets really stuck in my head. And then the crazy thing is you start hearing it all over. The more you hear it in your head, the more you'll start to realize that these sounds are actually all around us in music. People have been using them for a long time. It's not a new thing. So like I said, Lydian's one of my favorites. And there's some interesting kind of case uses for Lydian. Cheers, everybody. If you haven't got a drink, grab a drink, and even if it's just water, that's all good. But there's some kind of case uses for Lydian where it's like, that really is the best sound. And then there's other cases where you would just go, no, that's not the best sound. For example, if I was playing like soul music, like Soul Man, right, for example. It's really a G major sound, isn't it? Right? You wouldn't go... It's just contextually wrong, isn't it? So in that instance, like it's G major, and even then, I think major isn't often the best thing on soul music. Sure, you could go to the Aeolian mode, major first, the first mode, right? But really, to me, it's major pentatonic. I mean, even... That's... So it's context, right? I don't tend to use Lydian unless it's like a jazz thing or something that kind of has that sort of flavor-ish, you know, and so I'd consider something like Steely Dan as, you know, something that has that flavor-ish, even though it's not, I don't think their music really is jazz. It's really like pop with jazz influence and blues and all kinds of stuff. That's why I love Steely Dan. But to me, it's sort of, it's context, isn't it? If I'm playing soul music, like I said, it's sometimes in soul music, you don't even want a major 7 chord. You just want... It wants to be very simple, do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's context. Any questions? Is this all making sense? Right. So if we look at Mixolydian, right? Let's keep going down that track, right? We have G7, then we have an A minor chord, right? Would be our next chord in the key. Essentially, it's the same set of chords as we'd have in C major, but G is our perspective, right? So that chord there is our 2 chord, right? Not our 6 chord like a B. This is why I don't like thinking of C major. To me, it makes more sense to just think G, right? And then B minor 7 flat 5, which in this case would be the 7th chord if we were in C, but we're not, we're in G. So really, if we think about it, it's like a G9 chord, isn't it? We have G, 3rd, flat 7, 9, 5. Right? So to me, it's like that 3rd chord makes perfect sense that it would be a minor 7 flat 5. It's kind of like a continuation of the G chord. So it's a perfect substitute for the G. Now the C major 7, well, that makes sense. D minor 7. And there's an interesting thing, isn't it? Right. If we look at D minor 7, it's the 5 chord of D Mixolydian. But if we did them in reverse, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, right? Because they're all relative. Alright, and then E minor. Alright, it's like a G6 type thing. And then F major, which is like a G sus. Jesus. The Jesus chord, right? So if we kind of look at that, right, and we kind of let's take that further, because that's kind of like the basics of it, right? And I talked about it in that other video. If we look at what I'm always looking for is what is the chords that spell out the sound of that mode. To me, sure, totally does, right? Not really, right? That's pretty ambiguous that it could be G major just as much as G7 that it's going back to. Whereas you can hear those two are coming from the same place. Now this is an interesting thing. This chord used to pop up a lot in the 90s. A lot of people used to use that chord, and some people have called it a minor 7 with a sharp 5. I don't think of it that way. I've never liked that. To me, there's nothing minor about it. Right? It sounds, if you listen to it from a perspective of thinking happy, sad, or funky, like, you know, major being happy, minor being sad, and dominant being funky. It's more major, isn't it? To me, that's really like an F chord. It's like a 3rd in the bass F, right? But to me, that's more a Mixolydian sound, right? And then this could be, right? We've already established that, but so could this, right? So now instead of having that standard diatonic chord progression, you know, right? To me, that now speaks more Mixolydian than the other one did. So does that, right? It's cool. Really, that's just like a G7 with a third in the bass, isn't it? Or a G add 9 with a third in the bass, if you want to call it that. C7. Well, this doesn't really work, does it? It's kind of, to me, I don't hear that as a Mixolydian chord. So there's a couple of things you can do there. C6, I think that works better, right? If you're thinking like a Mixolydian sound, whereas this, right? Or C sus. I think one of the key things is having that F in there wherever you can, you know. Now I'm not trying to use these all over the top of each other, but I might go something like, or even that's even better. That's C major 13, 1, 7, 3, 13. The famous mu chord. Right? That has to be minor, doesn't it? So D minor 6. I think that works good, right? That sounds to me like a Mixolydian chord, whereas... Oh, yeah. I get what you mean now. Yeah, Steely Dan used that chord all the time, right? Right, which was like a G over C. Right, it's all built off that chord, right? Right? I want a name when I lose. Yeah, exactly. Great lyrics, aren't they? That's that chord. So anyway, back to Mixolydian. And then the E minor. I think E minor 7 just on its own works well. It kind of has a lot of the notes like a G triad over the top, but even works better as a minor 11. Right, so now we have G13, F add 9 over A, G add 9 over B, C major 6, D minor 6, minor 13, depends on what you want to call that, E minor 11, and then F major I think just works on its own. And to me that sounds like a Mixolydian progression. So I'll make up a little chord progression with it. So you can hear that's kind of a sound that to me encompasses Mixolydian. You can do this with any of the modes, right? Try and find like a series of chords that spell the sound of that mode, right? And what'll happen by exploring this sort of stuff is you get to hear these things more and more and more. And I find like myself, like it took me a long time to kind of get this stuff together to where the point where I could really hear the difference. And the thing is, like, once you hear it, it's all around you and all over the place, and you'll start to recognize it on the bandstand too. You'll be playing, you'll hear someone play something, and maybe they'll go, and you'll be like, ah. Right? Or maybe they go, right, and you go, ah, major 7 sharp 5. Which isn't a major scale mode, but you get the idea, right? Cheers, everyone. I hope you're well. Sunday night in Wellington, New Zealand. It's not as cold as it has been today. The sun was shining, which was nice, really nice. Had a gig last night with the Lady Killers. Really last minute gig actually. I was I kind of knew about it about 2 or 3 days before because Jackie had sent me an email saying, hey, Dixon's got COVID, so he can't do the gig, and I was like, oh, stink. Yeah, so yeah, he couldn't do the gig, which was a bummer. But so the day before, I got a call and she said, "Yep, gig's on. Here's the songs we're going to be doing for the gig," and that was like, okay, all good. So I had a whole heap of songs to learn for that gig, which was totally fine, you know. Half of them I'd done before. There was a couple in there, and there was like Somebody to Love, and that was one that and they wanted to do it with just guitar and vocal. And I kind of thought, oh, gee, that's kind of a tricky one, because it's really a very piano-heavy thing. Seems simple, but it's trickier than it seems. Right, so I had to try and figure out a way to do that, and they sent through a couple of charts for that. They had a piano one, which didn't make sense because, you know, it had treble and bass clef parts all written out. And I'm not particularly good at reading bass clef, mostly because I just don't really read bass clef very often. It's a treble clef instrument, isn't it? So I took the intro from that, and the rest of it I kind of put into another chart. But then we had a rehearsal yesterday morning before the show. Got together and ran a couple of songs. So that was one of the ones we run. The chart was just way wrong for the arrangement they had. So just sat there and wrote it out again. And what I do is, with that, as I put the track up, I get a piece of paper and I draw a bunch of bar lines. So I've got them all in rows of 4 I can see. And then I just go through and I just put the root notes in, and then I fill in the chords as I go, because I already knew how it went. It was just a matter of getting all the form worked out and so on and so on. I have to have charts. And the reason that's super useful is, in fact, I can show you. I wonder if I can unplug this safely. Yeah, I can. Got my iPad right here. I'll show you what my chart looked like. Where are we? Hopefully you can see that all right. It's the second page. All right. So they're really just cheat sheets. It's really just for me. I mean, I'm not going to give it to anyone else. Nobody else is ever going to read it. It's just going to be me having to try and black my way through their gig. So it was sort of, and I find that's a super useful thing, because then the next time I get a call out for their gig, if it's a day before like that, which happens, you know, because I'm known as somebody who reads, that I end up getting last minute calls for a lot of gigs, which is totally fine. I'm happy to be working, right? But being able to read, I'll just pull that back up. Being able to read means that I can just walk in and do the gig if I've got that chart. Now I've got that for the next time there's anything with him or with anyone else, right? So I never mind doing that. There was another one in there, Tarakihi, the Carl Doi song, which actually I had played with Carl before. Yeah, so I had to kind of, again, write that one out because there was no chart for that one. So I ended up doing about 4 or 5 charts, maybe 6 charts that night out of the whole lot for the show. And then we went in and we did quick sound checking into the gig, you know. But it's been a bit quiet on the gig front in Wellington lately. It's been like that for everyone. It's not just me. I was talking to a friend today who hires hires backline equipment and sound equipment, and he said the last 6 weeks have been the quietest for years for him. He's had some work on, but not as much. So you see there, I kind of got a little bit of Lydian kind of taste on some of those stuff, because in that context, it's like I'm playing a jazz tune, right? It's Giant Steps. That tune, I've always enjoyed playing that tune. It's kind of it's a good test in a lot of ways. But to me, that's a space you can use some Lydian stuff, but you have to be careful with Giant Steps, because the thing I found with Giant Steps is if you get too far away from the harmony, then people just think often that you don't know how to play the chord changes. You know, if you're not, so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're going to play Giant Steps, you really have to outline the chord changes at least one whole chorus to kind of establish it for the listener, right? And then you can sort of start stretching it in the second chorus. But if you go too far out from it, then it just sounds like you're not really sure about where the chord changes are. Yeah, depending on how good you are, right? That's one of those things. But I find there's a couple of places in there, right? Right, in those cases, those 2-5-1s, it's not too far out of it, but it's close enough. Do you know what I mean? And it creates a nice kind of color against it. Any questions? I'm gonna have to finish up in a minute, people, I'm afraid. So I hope you've had a good evening. I am having these Tiger Crystal Ultra Low Carb beers. I've only had one. I haven't even finished that. I've been out for the day, so. Anything you want to hear? Or any questions? No? Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone being here. I enjoy doing these live streams. It's they become a sort of a regular thing these Sunday nights. So, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and for everyone being cool. And I will see you all next week. Thanks. Take care. Cheers. Oh, sorry, I was just about to go that, and you said some more Steely Dan. I'll play a little bit of. My favorite Steely Dan tune. Thanks again for tuning in, people. Have a good day, eh? Cheers.